Do you ever wonder what your therapist is thinking during your therapy session? If so, I'm gonna explain in this podcast so that way you can help you to think through your problems like a therapist would. So, believe it or not, throughout all the myths and rumors that you've heard, us as therapists, we're not psychic. I can't read your mind, I don't know what you're thinking, but when you start to speak, there are thoughts that I have about everything that you just said. And these thoughts help me and you to get through your problems a lot faster because we have a different lens that we see all of your problems through. And I'll give you a great example. You may describe someone to us like a family member, maybe a spouse, as someone that's angry, controlling, all these different things, right? The terrible of the most terrible. But us as therapists, we're listening to it, and what we see is someone that's maybe anxious or maybe insecure, or someone that has some unresolved trauma that you haven't gotten to the bottom of. Because of those things, we're actually able to think through your problems a lot quicker and get you from point A to point B fast. So that is one way us as therapists actually think through problems. Now, what is it that we're actually thinking during those sessions? Well, in this podcast, I'm gonna tell you everything. So again, you can get through your problems a lot faster and also give you a higher level of thinking, right? Because in this podcast, what you'll hear me say, especially with the example I just gave, is that a lot of times we're thinking through things on a surface level, but there's a deeper level that we are able to get to. And with that example with your spouse or a family member who seems angry or who seems controlling, there's a deeper level that we can go to the bottom of the answers that we're looking for. So with that being said, we're gonna jump into this podcast. Before we do, I want you to hit the subscribe button. And the reason why is because in this podcast, I give so many tips and valuable information that I would give in my therapy sessions that you can get right here free from your phone. Now, the best thing about this is that if you've never been to therapy, consider this your first therapy session. And the reason why is because, again, it's gonna mimic exactly what goes on. Now, if you wanna get a little deeper, hit the subscribe button, but also comment. When you leave comments, I respond to all of them. So that way me and you can develop our own rapport. So with that being said, let's jump into point number one. So the beautiful thing about what I do as a therapist is that I can sit with so many different people at one given time. So in a day, I can go and sit with someone who's making $50,000 a year, right? And in the very next hour, I can sit down with someone who's making $1 million. And this is the thing that I think is the biggest myth of it all when it comes to therapy. The person that's having all these problems, that's making $50,000 a year, after we get done with the phone call, right? Phone call, Zoom, whatever, however we're doing the session, I can literally get on the next call and talk about the same exact problem with the millionaire. So it could be problems with a porn addiction. It could be problems with their marriage. It could be problems with self-worth. And yes, even people that are making millions of dollars still struggle with self-worth. And they think the answer is making more money, but they fail to realize that that is not the answer. And just to give you a tip, because you've made it this far through the podcast, I want to answer that problem right there. So you cannot solve internal problems with external resources, right? You can't solve internal problems with external, let's say, answers. That may be even a better way to say it. So when it comes with self-worth, something that's internal, making more money is not going to solve that, right? Driving a better car is not going to solve that. Or changing your relationship status is definitely not going to solve something inward. You have to do the work internally to solve those internal problems. All right. And that's actually a bonus. I'll just give you guys a thought that we have as a therapist. It's like, hey, the way this person is solving this problem is totally inaccurate, right? They're doing a lot of work. They're doing a lot of different things, right? Maybe a lot of things they even heard on, let's say, Instagram or whatever. But those are not things that's going to help. And that is sometimes the thoughts that we have. And like I said, that's just a bonus. That's just a throwaway that I'm giving you guys. But going back to the part about having two different clients, same problem. The biggest thing that they don't realize, and this is one of the first thoughts that us as therapists have, is that they don't know how common their problems are. Now, here's the thing. The person that's struggling with a porn addiction, I think lately the biggest thing is probably gambling addictions. The biggest thing that they fail to realize is actually that the problem is not a problem. When you understand that, you're actually able to solve, ironically, the problem. So I can tell you what I mean by that. Going through something like grief isn't a problem, right? It's a process that you go through, but it's not a problem. The problem becomes when you think that this grief shouldn't be there, and now you're trying to get it to go away through things like, whether it's a porn addiction, gambling addiction, drinking, smoking, whatever the case it may be. It's always about how you look at the problems or the situations that you go through that determines if it really is a problem. When you understand that, you start to see that life is only a problem that I make it. So if I determine, and what's funny about this is I wrote this down on my notepad during the session I had with a client. I said at any given moment, I can decide that this day is a good day. That is a decision that we all have, right? Now, to believe that you have that power is what separates you from the people that are depressed and the people that are just living life, frolicking, and all those other things, right? So you have the decision to decide, but you have to know that you have that power, and that will help you to get through so many different problems in life. So again, this first point that I make is that you do not know how common the problem actually is. So second, the biggest thing that I hear, right? The biggest load of crap or BS that I hear as a therapist is this: I'm a procrastinator. And the reason why it's BS is because at your heart, at your core, you're not a procrastinator. And proof of that is the fact that you're able to watch every episode of the Netflix show that you love, right? So if it's something like Love is Blind, which is a very popular one, me and my wife, we watch it. We actually kind of love it. Man, we know when the seasons are coming out. We know where they're going to be. We look at the people's Instagrams, right, to see what their day-to-day looks like. Like we love that show, right? And we don't procrastinate on it. And it's the same thing with you. So whether it's a show, and sometimes it may even be you helping other people. You may say, I'm too tired to go to the gym, but let that friend call and say, hey, they need help moving their couch, right? Hey, you're there, right? And even at work, you may find that whether it's a boss, manager, whoever, maybe even a slacking coworker, they may ask you, hey, do you have a second? And because we're nice people, because you're a nice person, you say, yeah, sure. And that second becomes an hour. It may even become the rest of your day. And as a result, you believe that you're a procrastinator, and that is not the case. So when someone tells me that they're procrastinating, here's the thought that I have. What are they avoiding? The truth is, what are they really avoiding? When I ask that question, and sometimes I ask it out loud, it forces them to think again on a deeper level than the surface. Because it's not just that they were busy with work or they were tired that day or whatever BS answer they give. The reason is that they didn't feel like going to the gym because they were afraid to get judged. They feel like they're already out of shape. And if they go to a place where all these in shape people are, I'm gonna look like different, a coward. I'm gonna look like shameful, like whatever it is. And that is not the case, guys. Trust me when I say that. So with that being said, I'm gonna talk to you guys about this third point, right? The third point when it comes to all the thoughts that us as therapists have. So currently I have a client who runs his own social media agency. And before that, he was actually working a corporate job. He was doing some computer engineering type stuff. And I remember at the beginning of that job, he was telling me how stressed he was because he didn't know how to log into his computer, or he didn't know how to work some of the programs, if you will. And some of the problems that he was giving me, or that he was telling me that he was having, honestly, they were kind of introductory. They were kind of basic, right? Now, for him, they meant the world because he wanted to make a good first impression. And there's no fault to him about that, right? So I remember when he told me that, hey, he was finally ready to leave this job because he wanted to start his own business. And when he told me that, I said, cool, great, let's talk about it. And he started to discuss it, started to create goals, and he started to make progress. I remember when he first signed his big client and he started to get passive income, how big of a deal that was because he was able to now pay off his bills. But I remember when he came across the next problem in this business, how stressed he was. And in that moment, I remember all the problems, I like to call them dragons, right? I like to call them dragons. I remember all the dragons that he slayed in his past, and I had to bring them up to him. I had to remind him like, hey, like we've been through tough times. We've been through times where we didn't think that there was a way out, and we fought, we found a way. And that's when it hit me, right? And this is a thought that I have with so many of my clients. And I'll give you like a real quick another story about another client because this happened this week where I had a client apply for a job that was outside of his industry, right? Outside of his industry. Now he had some of the skill sets from college, but he felt that he didn't still have those skill sets because it's been years since he's used them. He went and did an interview. He sat down and they gave him a test problem. He went and worked on the problem, gave it back to them, and they actually said, this problem, right? This answer that you gave to the problem was better than any answer that they've ever given, right? That they've ever received, if you will. Now, I remember in that moment asking him to tell me about his anxiety before applying to that job. And he said, man, I felt like an imposter. I don't know if I can do it. It's been so long since I've done this type of work. Now, I remember asking him what was his confidence like after, right? After the interview, he said, Coach, I feel real good about it. I feel like they're gonna offer me, and now the pressure is whether or not I accept it. And this ties to the next and really the last thought that us as therapists have when we're sitting down and we're listening to you guys. And the thought is, they're a lot better than they think. There's a good chance that you're a lot better than you currently think you are. And that's the God honest truth, right? And I even asked this question to you guys. If you believe that yourself, what would be different? Truly, what would be different? Maybe you would even say you would stop worrying about things and you just live life as is. Maybe there would be bigger risks that you would take in life. Whatever the case it may be, I know there would be things that you would do differently because now you have this belief that you can do it. You have this belief that you are good enough. And that is something that I see time and time again. Even today, I can give you another story about a client today, but I'll spare you with that. But nonetheless, a lot of us are so consumed with some of the problems or some of the past mistakes that we've had that we still live by those old stories. And because of that, we can never see who we have become over the course of time. And that's what happened with this guy who's running his own social media agency. He remembered all the problems that he had, whether it's with this job or previous situations, that he's forgotten who he actually is, or he's forgotten who he's not become. And that's where we have to come and remind you again of all the dragons that you slayed. So with that being said, I'm gonna review these 3 thoughts that us as therapists have. And again, the purpose of this is so that you can go out and start thinking like a therapist and get through your problems a lot faster. So again, the first thought that we have as therapists is that they don't know how common this problem is. And again, the chances are it's only a problem, right? Because you believe that it's a problem. Whatever you're going through, it's only a problem because you give it that type of energy. Chances are it's normal what you're going through, thus making it not a problem. The second point that I made is what you're really avoiding, or the question rather, is what are you really avoiding that's keeping you stuck? Because again, it's not that you're a procrastinator or whatever, like that's total BS, but there's something that you're afraid of. There's something that you're avoiding, and we want to get to the bottom of that. And then the last point that I made was that you're a lot better than you think. And I see this time and time again. And there's a good chance someone has told you in your life that you're really good. I just ask that you believe them the next time they tell you. All right, guys, this is Coach Wells. Thanks for checking out this podcast, and make sure you hit the subscribe button. All right, I'll see you later.